During my 75th birthday, I overheard my daughter-in-law say, "I hope this is her last one." I smiled and stayed quiet. The next day, I made a call that changed everything. If you're watching this video, subscribe now and comment where you're watching from. The party had been James's idea, my only son, always insisting we needed to celebrate Mom properly. The elegant affair unfolded in the home I'd designed 40 years ago, now slowly becoming foreign as Rebecca systematically redecorated it room by room. I excused myself from a conversation with former colleagues to use the bathroom, my legs feeling unusually heavy, a symptom that had been increasing since my sister Elaine's death 3 years ago. As I walked down the hallway, voices drifted from my son's study. "I hope this is her last birthday," Rebecca said, champagne glass catching the light. "I've already planned how I'll redecorate her studio into the most magnificent closet." I froze, my hand gripping the wall for support. "Patience, darling." James's voice, my defender, my pride, sliced through me with clinical detachment. "The doctor says her heart won't last much longer, and when it happens, all this becomes officially ours." They clinked glasses, laughing softly. 50 years designing buildings had taught me to calculate structural integrity under pressure. I straightened my spine, arranged my face into the pleasant mask I'd perfected in male-dominated boardrooms, and returned to my guests. "To the best mother a son could ask for," James announced later, raising his glass. The same son who had always struggled with living in my shadow, who had shown flashes of resentment when magazines described him as Caroline Weber's son rather than his own man. I smiled and nodded, eyes clear for the first time in years. I saw everything now, how James had gradually taken control after Elaine died. First it was helping with technology, then managing my confusing finances, and finally controlling my medication for my dangerous heart condition. That night, alone in my bedroom, I stared at the ceiling. James had always been ambitious, forever seeking the approval his father had withheld. My late husband had resented my success, and I now saw that same resentment reflected in our son. Morning came, and I watched through my window as James and Rebecca left for their daily routines. I waited until Martha brought my breakfast, Martha who had been with me for 30 years, who had nursed me through pneumonia when Elaine couldn't travel, whose daughter's college education I had quietly funded after her husband's death. "Martha," I whispered, "I need to tell you something terrible. And I need your help." Her eyes registered concern, then understanding as I explained. Without hesitation, she replied, "Mrs. Weber, I've seen how they've been changing your medications. I've suspected something was wrong for months, but didn't know how to approach you. Whatever you need, I'm with you." An hour later, alone in my studio, I dialed a number I hadn't called in nearly a decade. Victor Morales, his voice, still deep and commanding despite the years. "Victor," my voice cracked. "It's Caroline." The silence stretched between us. Decades of unspoken feelings, a relationship cut short when I chose family over love. "I need your help," I said finally. "And I think you'll want to hear what I have to say about the urban hub concept." I could almost hear him straightening in his chair. Our unrealized vision, the revolutionary sustainable urban complex we'd designed together before our paths diverged. "I'm listening," Victor replied. For the first time since finding my sister's cold body 3 years ago, I felt something stir within me. Not just anger, but purpose. January 15th, 2025, the morning after my birthday revelation. I sat in my studio examining my life with the same precision I once applied to structural integrity calculations. How had I let this happen? James had inserted himself into every aspect of my existence while I grieved Elaine. 3 years ago, when she died suddenly of an aneurysm, he stepped in to help while I was emotionally vulnerable. By August 2024, he'd convinced me to switch from Dr. Leonard, my physician of 20 years, to Dr. Harrison, his cardiac specialist friend. I studied my trembling hands. Were they actually deteriorating? Or was it the cocktail of medications James insisted I needed? The same medications he personally administered each morning and night. Martha brought tea, closing the door softly behind her. "I've been documenting the changes in your medications," she whispered, placing a small notebook beside me. "The labels don't match what they put in the containers. I started keeping notes 8 months ago when your symptoms got worse after each prescription update." "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved. You've been risking your position. Mrs. Weber, when my husband died and Alicia needed college money, you didn't offer a loan. You created a scholarship that preserved our dignity. Some loyalties can't be bought. They've been paying me extra to report your confused behaviors, but I've been telling them what they want to hear. Using the untraceable phone Martha had procured, I placed a call to Dr. Leonard. "Caroline Weber," he exclaimed. "It's been too long. James told us you preferred consolidating your care with his specialist. Edward, I need your help discreetly. I believe I'm being poisoned." We arranged to meet at his colleague's private practice in Evanston. That afternoon, while James believed I was napping, Martha drove me to the appointment. Dr. Leonard performed a thorough examination. "Your heart is strong as ever, Caroline. The tremors, confusion, and weakness you're experiencing are consistent with anticholinergic toxicity and possibly benzodiazepine overdose, not heart disease." I nodded, the final confirmation of what I already knew. "I'll need to report this," he said gravely. "Not yet," I pleaded. "If they're confronted before I have protection in place, they'll accelerate their plan or claim I'm having delusions. I need time." He reluctantly agreed to give me 3 weeks to secure legal protection. "How will you avoid taking the pills?" Martha asked on the drive back. "He watches you swallow them." "My husband was an actor," I replied. "He taught me a few tricks during our marriage. I can create a pocket under my tongue, but I'll need to maintain the symptoms to avoid suspicion." Back home, I resumed my role, the increasingly fragile mother. That evening, James brought my medication with practiced concern, standing over me as I placed the pills in my mouth, took a sip of water, and swallowed, while secretly preserving the tablets in the pocket I'd created under my tongue. "You seem better this evening," he remarked, studying my face. I allowed my hand to tremble as I reached for the water glass, spilling a few drops. "Just a momentary clarity, I suppose. They come and go." He nodded, satisfied, and left me to my rest. As night fell, I extracted the tablets from my mouth and examined them under the desk lamp. Tomorrow, I would begin building the evidence that would prove my son was trying to murder me. February 15th, 2025. 1 month after my birthday revelation, I'd established a careful routine of pretending to take my medications while collecting them as evidence. Dr. Leonard had helped me obtain legitimate prescriptions through Martha, allowing me to begin recovery without alerting James and Rebecca. The detective Victor hired, Michael Donovan, was an ex-Boston police officer specializing in financial crimes against the elderly. We met during my scheduled physical therapy sessions. Martha would drive me to the medical building. Then we'd slip out a service entrance where Michael would pick us up in an unmarked car. "They've been methodical," Michael explained during our third meeting, showing me financial statements. "James has been transferring funds to offshore accounts, small amounts at first, growing larger as your condition worsened." "How much?" I asked. "Just over 2 million so far." I nodded, feeling strangely detached. "And the doctor?" "Dr. Harrison has a pattern. 3 wealthy patients in the last 5 years, all with heart conditions, all leaving considerable estates to family members who were his patients first." "He kills for referrals," I murmured. "Not directly. He prescribes medication combinations that cause deterioration over time. The death certificates all read natural causes, very clean." I studied the documents, architect's eyes finding patterns. "Show me everything on Rebecca." Michael hesitated. "Mrs. Weber, this might be difficult to hear. I found out my son is trying to murder me for my money. I doubt anything could be more difficult than that." He passed me another folder. Inside were photographs of Rebecca with a man I didn't recognize, clearly intimate. More troubling were the documents they were reviewing. Blueprints of my house, property valuations. "Stephen Kaufman, real estate broker specializing in luxury properties," Michael explained. "Before connecting with your son's circle, Rebecca was investigated for similar elder financial abuse in Boston 5 years ago. The case was dropped when the victim died before charges could be filed." The pieces connected in my mind. "So my son married a professional predator." "It appears so. They're not just planning your death, they're already spending the proceeds." That evening, I began sketching, not buildings, but a different kind of structure, a trap. Every good architectural design begins with understanding the foundation you're working with. Mine was crumbling, but not yet collapsed. The physical symptoms of long-term medication poisoning would take months to reverse. My hands still trembled slightly when I was truly tired. Occasional cognitive fog descended without warning. a frightening experience that Dr. Leonard assured me would diminish over time, but might never completely disappear. These limitations became part of my design. I couldn't engage in a direct confrontation while physically compromised. I needed to create a scenario where their own actions would expose them. The next morning, James entered my bedroom with a glass of water and pills. "I was thinking," I said, injecting a note of confusion into my voice, "perhaps we should update my will soon, just to make sure everything's in order." Something flashed in his eyes, eagerness poorly disguised as concern. "That's thoughtful, Mom. I'll call Henderson tomorrow." Henderson, not my attorney of 40 years, but his friend from the golf club. Another piece of the puzzle. After he left, I removed the pills from under my tongue and added them to the growing collection hidden in a hollowed-out architectural history book. Evidence. My recovery would be slow, my justice carefully constructed. Like any good architect, I understood that rushing compromises structural integrity. March 10th, 2025. Nearly 2 months after discovering the betrayal, my physical improvement remained carefully hidden beneath a facade of continued decline. I'd mastered appearing frailer when James and Rebecca were watching, while using my periods of unsupervised time to rebuild my strength. Today marked a crucial development: my meeting with Richard Anderson, one of Chicago's most formidable attorneys specializing in elder law. Victor had arranged the consultation at his downtown office, disguised as another medical appointment. "Mrs. Weber," Richard said after reviewing my evidence, "what your son and daughter-in-law are doing constitutes elder abuse, financial fraud, and potentially attempted homicide. We should go to the authorities immediately." "Not yet," I countered. "A premature legal battle would be protracted, draining, and might not secure the complete justice I seek. James is well connected in this city. I need an airtight case and a strategy that prevents them from enjoying any benefits from their actions." Richard's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "What exactly do you have in mind?" I outlined my plan, watching his initial skepticism transform into reluctant admiration. "It's unorthodox," he admitted, "but potentially effective. The property transfer to an educational foundation is particularly elegant, legally sound, and difficult to contest once executed. And the timing of the public revelation? Critical. We'll need everything in place before they realize what's happening." After the meeting, Victor drove me back to the medical center, where Martha waited. "You're taking substantial risks, Caroline," he said, concern evident in his voice. "I'm eliminating risks. Victor, every day I remain under their control is another day they could decide to accelerate their timeline." The Urban Hub project had been our shared vision, a revolutionary urban development concept that integrated sustainable living and community spaces. We'd designed it together before our personal and professional paths diverged decades ago. The Carrington Group, a progressive development corporation, had approached me directly 3 months before my birthday, unaware of my supposed decline since I'd managed to keep my condition private outside family circles. "They don't know about your situation?" Victor asked. "My situation is largely fabricated by James and his doctor," I corrected. "Professionally, I've maintained limited contact but solid standing. At home, I maintained my performance, allowing James to help me review financial documents I wasn't permitted to read carefully. Each interaction became evidence, carefully documented through the surveillance system Michael had installed during a weekend when James and Rebecca attended a charity gala in Milwaukee. The system was ingeniously hidden, micro cameras concealed in light fixtures I had designed decades ago, audio capture devices integrated into the home's existing intercom system. As the original architect, I knew every cavity, every conduit, every potential surveillance point invisible to those who hadn't designed the space. That evening, I heard James on the phone with Dr. Harrison through the surveillance system. "She's asking about updating her will," James said, voice tense. "Is it time to adjust her medication again?" "Carefully," Harrison replied. "The combination we're using is already approaching maximum effectiveness without obvious toxicity markers. We don't want to trigger suspicions with a sudden decline or hospitalization. The West Ridge partnership requires capital I don't currently have access to. We need to accelerate. Patience has gotten you this far, James. Rush now and you risk everything." I was running out of time, but so were they. The foundation paperwork was nearly complete, the Carrington contract ready for signing, and Elizabeth Chen, a rising star in the prosecutor's office whose mother had worked with me early in her architectural career, had agreed to review my case file. April 5, 2025, nearly 3 months into my covert resistance. The physical toll of prolonged medication poisoning continued to manifest in unexpected ways. Some mornings I woke with my right hand completely numb. Other days, words would temporarily vanish from my vocabulary. Terrifying episodes that Dr. Leonard assured me should gradually diminish. "You need to eat, Mrs. Weber," Martha insisted, placing a tray beside my drafting table where I'd been working on the Urban Hub plans. I glanced up, realizing I'd forgotten lunch again. 3 months of proper medication had improved my condition significantly, but the lingering effects of the poisoning required careful management, consistent meals, proper hydration, and strategic rest periods. "The Carrington people were impressed," Victor said during our daily secure call. "They understand your current physical limitations, but value your architectural vision more than your ability to personally visit construction sites. And the foundation? Fully established as of yesterday. The Weber Foundation for Young Architects now legally owns your property. James can't touch it, though he won't discover this until the documents are publicly filed, which we can delay until our confrontation." I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. "The guest list for the dinner? Confirmed. 24 attendees, including the Carrington executives, Elizabeth Chen, and several influential architecture critics. And James's promotion announcement? His office confirmed he's planning to announce becoming partner at Westridge Development, a position requiring the substantial investment he's been siphoning from your accounts." That evening, Rebecca knocked on my studio door, a rare occurrence. "Caroline, I've been thinking about the anniversary of your first major commission next month," she said with practiced warmth. "What if we host a special dinner at the Palmer Club? James just got a membership, and it would be so lovely to celebrate you there." I blinked in feigned confusion, while inwardly rejoicing at their predictability. They were creating the perfect stage for their own exposure. "That would be wonderful, dear," I replied, voice quavering appropriately. "How thoughtful of you to remember." After she left, I texted Martha. "They're planning their own event, May 15th. Perfect timing." That night, I watched from my window as James had a heated phone conversation on the patio. Using the surveillance system, I accessed the recording later. "It's taking too long," James was saying. "Harrison says we need to accelerate. Yes, I know it's risky, but the Westridge partnership requires immediate capital. The foundation? No, that was just talk." She never followed through. How little he knew me. The next morning, James brought my medication with a different pill added, slightly larger, with a faint green tint. "Dr. Harrison suggested a supplement to help with your circulation," he explained smoothly. I nodded and pretended to swallow it with the others. Once alone, I sealed it in a plastic bag and texted Michael. "New medication introduced. Need analysis ASAP." 2 days later, Michael confirmed my suspicions. A higher dose of the same drug that had been causing my symptoms, but this version would accelerate heart and kidney damage. They were done waiting. So was I. Over the next week, I finalized every aspect of my counteroffensive with Victor, Michael, and Richard. Meanwhile, I focused on the Urban Hub designs, losing myself in the creative flow that had defined my career. Despite the lingering effects of the poisoning, my architectural vision remained intact, perhaps even enhanced by my newfound appreciation for creating spaces that accommodated vulnerability without sacrificing beauty or function. The countdown to May 15th had begun. In architectural projects, the final phase before unveiling always requires the most precision. My revenge would require that same exacting standard. May 10th, 2025. 5 days before the confrontation. The transformation needed to be both physical and strategic. For the dinner at Palmer Club, I needed to embody the change that had occurred within me, a visual statement as powerful as any building I'd ever designed. "Too severe," Victor commented as I tried on a black designer suit in his penthouse where I'd been secretly preparing. My recovery, while significant, remained incomplete. The tremors still appeared when I was tired, and occasional cognitive lapses required Victor's patient assistance. "I'm not attending a funeral," I agreed, though in many ways I was. The funeral of the passive, manipulated woman I'd allowed myself to become. We settled on a crimson dress, architectural in its precision, with clean lines that emphasized strength rather than fragility. My silver hair, which James had insisted I wear in a soft, grandmotherly style, was now cut in a sleek, sophisticated bob that framed my face with authority. "They won't recognize you," Victor said, something like awe in his voice. That's precisely the point. I practiced walking in the moderate heels I'd selected, a challenge after months of deliberate physical regression, but necessary for the dramatic effect we sought. 3 hours before the dinner, I met with Elizabeth Chen in her office, finalizing details. "The officers will be in plain clothes, positioned at the exits," she explained. "We're not executing arrests tonight. This is information gathering officially, but their presence should prevent any scene. And the documentation?" She patted a leather portfolio. "All here. Financial records, medical evidence, surveillance transcripts. Enough to start proceedings, though building a complete case will take time. The wheels of justice move slowly, Mrs. Weber, especially with well-connected perpetrators." I nodded, understanding. "I don't expect instant results, Ms. Chen. I've designed enough buildings to know that solid foundations matter more than quick construction." Martha helped me prepare at Victor's penthouse, carefully concealing the medical alert device Dr. Leonard had insisted I wear, a necessary precaution given the lasting cardiac effects of the medication I'd been given. "They won't know what hit them," she whispered, fastening my mother's pearls around my neck, the ones Rebecca had already claimed as promised to her. As we pulled up to the Palmer Club in Victor's car, I saw James and Rebecca greeting guests at the entrance. My son was resplendent in a new suit, Rebecca glittering with jewelry, some pieces I recognized from my own collection, apparently already migrated to her possession. "Ready?" Victor asked, offering his arm. I felt a momentary wave of lightheadedness, one of the lingering effects of the poisoning that still plagued me unpredictably. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I've been designing this moment for nearly 4 months. We timed our entrance perfectly, after all guests had arrived, just as James was becoming visibly concerned about my absence. The maitre d' announced us, Mr. Victor Morales and Mrs. Carolyn Weber. The room turned. I watched recognition dawn slowly on faces, followed by confusion, then amazement. I walked with as much grace as my recovering body could manage, head high, steps measured and confident, every inch the renowned architect who had once commanded the attention of international design conferences. "Mother?" James looked as though he'd seen a ghost. In a way, he had, the ghost of the woman he'd tried to erase. "James, Rebecca," I nodded coolly. "Thank you for arranging this lovely event." Rebecca's eyes darted between Victor and me, calculations almost visible behind her perfect makeup. You're looking well." "Amazing what proper medication can do," I replied with a smile that revealed nothing and everything. Throughout the first course, I watched James struggle to reconcile the frail, confused mother he'd left at home that morning with the commanding woman now accepting compliments from his colleagues. When dessert arrived, James clinked his glass. "I have an announcement to make. May 15th, 2025, the night of reckoning." As James shared his news about becoming partner at Westridge, I caught Victor's eye. The slightest nod passed between us. "Congratulations, James," I said when he finished. "I also have an announcement." The Carrington executives and my legal team entered on cue, as if they'd been waiting in the wings, which, in fact, they had been. "I'm pleased to announce the official launch of the Urban Hub concept," I said, my voice carrying easily across the now silent room. "A $120 million urban renewal project that will transform the old industrial district." Elegant portfolios appeared at each place setting, delivered by waitstaff instructed earlier. "But that's not all," I continued, enjoying the bloodless look on James's face. "I'm equally proud to announce the establishment of the Weber Foundation for Young Architects, which as of last month is the new owner of my residence, preserved in perpetuity as an educational center." Rebecca's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. "And finally," I said, nodding to Elizabeth Chen, who stepped forward with her portfolio, "I believe some legal matters require immediate attention." The fallout was immediate and devastating. As Elizabeth quietly presented James with legal documents detailing the investigations into financial fraud, medical manipulation, and conspiracy, I watched the careful facade he'd maintained for years crumble before my eyes. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, voice rising as he skimmed the papers. "My mother is confused, has been for months. Ask her doctor. Dr. Harrison is currently being questioned by the medical board." Elizabeth replied calmly. His cooperation could reduce his own charges considerably. Rebecca, always the pragmatist, was already distancing herself. James handled all the medical decisions, she said quickly. I was rarely involved in those conversations. The surveillance transcripts, helpfully highlighted by Elizabeth's team, contradicted this claim immediately. The dinner guests, an uncomfortable audience to this unfolding drama, began discreetly departing. The Carrington executives, however, remained firmly at my side, their presence a clear statement about where the power now resided. James, desperation replacing shock, tried one last maneuver. Mother, you're clearly unwell. Let's continue this conversation tomorrow when you've rested. I met his gaze directly. I've never been clearer in my thinking, James. Nearly 4 months of your poisoning required 3 months of recovery. But I'm fully capable of making my own decisions now. Poisoning? That's absurd. But his eyes darted to the exit where he'd spotted the plainclothes officers. We have the medication analysis, Elizabeth interjected smoothly, and Martha has provided a full statement about the pill substitutions she witnessed. At Martha's name, James's expression darkened. That interfering— Careful, I interrupted. Your position is precarious enough without adding witness intimidation. Rebecca, seeing the complete collapse of their plan, made a different calculation. She edged away from James, her designer heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. I need to use the restroom, she murmured, reaching for her purse. Mrs. Weber, Elizabeth said quietly, my colleague would be happy to accompany you. She nodded toward a female detective who stepped forward with a professional smile. The orchestration was perfect. No dramatic arrests, no public handcuffing, just the quiet, relentless pressure of consequences beginning to unfold. As the room emptied, James found himself increasingly isolated. His new firm partners drifted away with uncomfortable nods, the invisible bonds of social standing visibly recalculating in real time. You've just destroyed my career, he said when we were nearly alone, anger replacing his earlier panic. No, James, you destroyed it yourself, along with our relationship, the moment you decided my death was an acceptable path to your advancement. For the first time, he didn't deny it. You never understood what it was like being your son. Always in your shadow, never measuring up. Dad understood. He felt it too. The mention of my late husband, who had indeed struggled with my success, was calculated to wound. Once it would have. Now I saw it only as another manipulation. July 15th, 2025, 2 months after the confrontation at Palmer Club. I sat across from Elizabeth Chen in the prosecutor's office, reviewing new evidence. The case against James, Rebecca, and Dr. Harrison had strengthened considerably as financial forensics uncovered the full extent of their scheme. The medication evidence is particularly damning, Elizabeth explained, laying out the lab reports. The combinations Dr. Harrison prescribed showed a clear intent to induce symptoms mimicking dementia and heart failure. I studied the reports with clinical detachment, no longer feeling the visceral betrayal that had once consumed me. And James's accounts? We've traced just over $2 million transferred from your accounts to offshore holdings. The court has frozen everything pending trial. My son now lived in a rented apartment after being asked to take a leave from Westridge Development. His partnership offer had evaporated as news of the investigation spread through Chicago's close-knit professional circles. And Rebecca? Staying with her sister in Milwaukee, she's attempting to position herself as another victim, claiming James manipulated her. I smiled thinly. The surveillance recordings suggest otherwise. Elizabeth nodded. Her counsel has approached us about a potential cooperation agreement. She's willing to testify against James and Dr. Harrison in exchange for reduced charges. It's a standard strategy in complex cases like this. Is it worth considering? I asked. Potentially. Her testimony would strengthen the case against the other two, particularly Harrison. Medical crimes are notoriously difficult to prosecute without insider testimony. Later that day, I met with the Carrington team at their downtown offices, my first formal business meeting in years. My recovery continued steadily, though certain limitations remained. I still tired easily and occasionally lost words mid-sentence, a humbling experience that Victor gracefully navigated during meetings. The preliminary designs have already generated significant interest, Howard Carrington explained, as we reviewed the project timeline. Your return to active practice is being hailed as a major event in architectural circles. That evening, returning to Victor's penthouse where I'd been staying, I found an unexpected visitor waiting in the lobby. James looked terrible, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, wearing clothes that hadn't been pressed. The doorman appeared uncomfortable, clearly having been instructed not to allow him upstairs. "Mrs. Weber, I tried to explain you don't accept unscheduled visitors." "It's all right, Henry," I said calmly. "We can talk here." James straightened as I approached, attempting to summon his former confidence. "Mother, this has gone far enough. The family's dirty laundry is becoming public spectacle." "Attempted murder isn't dirty laundry, James. It's a felony." He flinched. "That's a gross exaggeration. Yes, I managed your medication and finances because you were becoming confused. Perhaps Dr. Harrison's approach was aggressive." "Stop." My voice cut through his excuses like a steel beam through plaster. "I've seen the text messages between you and Harrison discussing dosages to accelerate my cognitive decline. I've heard the recordings of you and Rebecca discussing how to make my death appear natural." His face paled. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Money? The money's gone, frozen or spent. The house? It's not even yours to give back anymore." "I want nothing from you," I replied, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in decades. "That's what you never understood. I gave you everything freely: love, opportunity, support. You could have had it all legitimately by simply waiting, by being the son I thought you were. Then why continue with this prosecution? For revenge, that's beneath you. Not revenge, consequences, and protection, not just for me, but for others. Harrison has had other patients, other victims. This needs to end." He attempted one final approach, voice lowering to the same gentle tone he'd used when administering my medications. "Mom, please, we're still family." I studied him, this stranger wearing my son's face, and felt a strange calm replace the hurt that had driven me for months. "No, James, we're not family anymore. We're plaintiff and defendant. That's the relationship you chose." October 15th, 2025, 5 months after the confrontation. Autumn had transformed Chicago, painting the city in amber and crimson. My own transformation continued in parallel, some days stronger than others, the lingering effects of the poisoning appearing unpredictably, but with decreasing frequency. "They're offering a plea deal," Elizabeth Chen explained during our weekly meeting at her office. The legal proceedings had progressed with methodical precision, though far slower than dramatic television portrayals would suggest. "What are the terms?" I asked, setting aside the urban hub blueprints I'd been reviewing. "For James, guilty plea to financial elder abuse, fraud, and attempted aggravated assault. 8 years, eligible for parole after 5. She slid the document across her desk. "For Rebecca, guilty plea to conspiracy and financial fraud. 3 years, eligible for parole after 18 months. I studied the proposal. "And Dr. Harrison? 6 years and permanent revocation of his medical license. He's cooperating extensively, providing information on other, similar cases." The thought of other elderly victims made my stomach tighten. "What do you recommend?" Elizabeth leaned back, her expression measured. "The evidence is strong, but trials are unpredictable and could stretch for years. This guarantees consequences without subjecting you to a lengthy, public proceeding where defense attorneys would certainly attack your mental competence." I considered her words carefully. "A trial would mean testifying, reliving the betrayal, having my mental competence questioned, exposing private humiliations." "I'll consider it," I replied, tucking the document into my portfolio. That evening, Victor and I dined on his terrace overlooking Lake Michigan. In the 5 months since moving into his guest room, our relationship had evolved into a comfortable companionship. Nothing romantic. Those feelings belonged to a different lifetime when we'd been young architects with matching ambitions. But something perhaps more valuable: mutual respect and understanding. "You're quiet tonight," he observed, pouring more wine. Thinking about the plea offer, I explained the terms. "Part of me wants to refuse, to push for maximum sentences." Victor nodded. "Understandable. What's stopping you?" "Practicality. A trial would be draining, potentially damaging to the foundation and urban hub." I paused. "And perhaps I'm just ready to build something new instead of demolishing the old." Later that night, unable to sleep, I found myself at my drafting table. Victor had converted a corner of his library into a studio space for me, complete with the specialized lighting I preferred. I was sketching modifications to the Urban Hub Community Center when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Mrs. Weber? A woman's voice, tentative. This is Rebecca. My hand tightened on the pencil. How did you get this number? That's not important. I needed to speak with you before. She hesitated. Before I accept the plea deal. I remained silent, waiting. I want you to know it wasn't my idea. The medication. Her voice had the practiced sincerity I recognized from countless social interactions. James and Dr. Harrison arranged everything. I just went along with it. The recordings suggest otherwise, Rebecca. Recordings can be misinterpreted. A pause. I'm calling because I need you to know I've found clarity through this experience. Spiritual growth. I almost laughed at the absurdity. You found Jesus in the shadow of a prison sentence. How convenient. I'm trying to make amends. Her composure cracked slightly. James manipulated me just like he manipulated you. I was young when we met, impressionable. You were 34 with an MBA from Northwestern and a previous investigation for elder financial abuse in Boston. I let that sink in before continuing. Michael Donovan is very thorough. Her sharp intake of breath was audible. That case was dropped. Yes, your previous victim died before charges could be filed. Convenient timing seems to be a pattern with you. The pretense of contrition vanished from her voice. You think you've won, don't you? The great Caroline Weber, back on top. But James was right about one thing. You'll die alone in that sterile penthouse, surrounded by your precious blueprints instead of family. I'd rather die surrounded by honest blueprints than dishonest family, Rebecca. January 15, 2026, 1 year after discovering the betrayal. The Weber Foundation for Young Architects welcomes you. The engraved stone plaque gleamed in the winter sunlight as reporters gathered for the official opening of my former home, now transformed into an educational center for architectural students. The timing was deliberate. Exactly 1 year since I'd overheard Rebecca's fatal birthday wish. Martha stood proudly beside me, now the foundation's administrative director rather than a housekeeper. Behind us, 20 scholarship students, the foundation's first cohort, waited for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Mrs. Weber, how does it feel to see your home transformed this way? Called out a reporter from Architectural Digest. I stepped to the microphone, careful of my balance. One of the lingering effects of the medication poisoning was occasional vertigo, though less frequent than months earlier. Architecture has always been about transformation, turning vision into structure, ideas into spaces where lives unfold. This building has been transformed many times, first from land to home, then from home to battleground. I paused, meeting the eyes of several reporters directly. Now its final and most important transformation, from private residence to public legacy. The Chicago Tribune reporter raised her hand. And your son? Any comment on his sentencing last month? Elizabeth Chen, standing nearby, moved to intervene, but I raised my hand slightly. My son made his choices. The courts have determined the consequences. Today isn't about destruction, but creation. These students, I gestured to the young architects behind me, represent the future. They're what matters now. The legal proceedings had concluded more swiftly than anticipated, largely due to the overwhelming evidence and the defendant's eventual acceptance of plea deals. James had received 8 years, Rebecca 3, and Dr. Harrison 6, with his medical license permanently revoked. More importantly, Elizabeth's team had used Harrison's cooperation to open investigations into 3 other suspicious deaths of wealthy elderly patients. After the ceremony, Victor guided me through what had once been my home. The transformation was remarkable. My studio, which Rebecca had planned to convert to a closet, now housed state-of-the-art design technology. The formal dining room where James had administered my medications was now a lecture hall. Does it feel strange? Victor asked, as we paused in what had once been my bedroom, now converted to a reference library. Less than I expected, I admitted. It feels right. Later that evening, the Carrington team hosted a reception at their offices to celebrate the groundbreaking for Urban Hub's first building. At 76, I found myself the center of attention in a way I hadn't been for decades, not as an elderly curiosity, but as an active, respected professional. The design innovations in the community center are remarkable, commented the sustainability director from the city planning department, particularly the integration of the wellness center with the employment resources. I smiled. Architecture isn't just about buildings, it's about designing systems that support human flourishing. As I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and discussing technical details, I caught sight of myself in a mirrored wall. The woman reflected there bore little resemblance to the fragile, diminished person I'd been a year earlier. My posture was straight, my gaze direct. Though my hand still occasionally trembled, a permanent reminder of what I'd endured, my handshake remained firm. Howard Carrington clinked his glass for attention. I'd like to propose a toast to Caroline Weber, whose vision for Urban Hub will transform not just our city's landscape, but its social fabric. As applause filled the room, I felt a complex emotion that took me a moment to identify: pride. Not the defensive pride I'd once taken in James's accomplishments, desperately trying to see my legacy continued through him. This was simpler, cleaner, pride in work well conceived and executed. After the reception, Elizabeth Chen approached with news about the other cases stemming from Dr. Harrison's cooperation. We're making progress. 2 families have found a measure of closure, knowing what really happened to their loved ones. And the third? Still under investigation, but promising. She smiled. Your case created a template for how to approach these situations. You've helped more people than you know. May 15th, 2026. 1 year after the confrontation at Palmer Club, I stood in the visitors area of the minimum security federal prison, waiting. The room was designed to simulate normalcy: bland beige walls, uncomfortable plastic chairs, vending machines humming in the corner. But nothing could disguise its essential purpose: controlled interaction between the free and the imprisoned. Are you sure about this? Victor had asked that morning as I prepared for the visit. He'd offered to accompany me, but this was something I needed to do alone. James entered wearing a khaki uniform that hung loosely on his frame. Prison had aged him visibly, his hair grayer, his posture less commanding. The arrogance that had defined him had been replaced by a wary caution. "Mother," he said, taking the seat across from me, "this is unexpected." "Is it? I informed your attorney I would be coming." He nodded. "Yes, but I didn't think you'd actually—" He gestured vaguely. "Why are you here?" A reasonable question. Over the past year, I had systematically rebuilt my life while his had been dismantled. The Weber Foundation was flourishing. The Urban Hub project had broken ground on its second building, and my new lakeside residence, a modern glass and steel structure designed specifically around my needs, was nearly complete. "I wanted to see you," I said simply, before I moved forward completely. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Move forward? I'm leaving for a 3-month architectural tour next week. Singapore, Tokyo, Barcelona, reviewing innovative urban development projects for Urban Hub's next phase. At my age, international travel becomes a significant undertaking, especially given the lingering health issues from your intervention. And you wanted to say goodbye in case something happens to you during your trip." His voice carried a hint of the old calculation. "Planning to update your will before you go?" I had to smile at his persistence. "James, there's nothing left for you in my will. The foundation has the house. My professional assets are in a trust for architectural education, and my personal wealth, what you didn't manage to transfer offshore, is designated for scholarships and medical research. Then why come at all?" Genuine confusion crossed his face. I studied him, this man who had been my only child, my anticipated legacy, and felt an emotion that surprised me: pity. "I came because I wanted to understand, not just what you did, but why. What makes a person decide their parent's life is worth less than their impatience for inheritance?" He looked away. "You wouldn't understand. Try me. I've spent a year rebuilding my life." "James, that process requires understanding what went wrong in the first place. It started small," he said finally. "After Dad died, you were so capable. Running the firm, winning awards, never needing anything from anyone. Then when Aunt Elaine died, you finally seemed vulnerable, human. So you exploited that vulnerability?" He winced. "I helped you, genuinely at first, but then I saw how easily you accepted my guidance on technology, finances. It felt like finally having power in our relationship. And Rebecca? Rebecca saw opportunity. She's always been practical. The new medication, the one you introduced right before the confrontation," I said finally. "That was meant to be the end, wasn't it?" He didn't deny it. "Harrison said your heart wouldn't last 3 months on that regimen." I nodded, absorbing this confirmation of what I'd already known. "You would have literally watched me die, day by day." "I would have been the devoted son caring for his ailing mother," he corrected. The narrative was important. Yes, I suppose it was. January 15th, 2027. 2 years to the day after overhearing Rebecca's fatal birthday wish. I hosted a gathering on the terrace of my new lakeside home, a modernist structure of glass, steel, and warm wood that accommodated my occasional physical limitations while emphasizing strength and clarity. To Caroline Weber and the second phase of Urban Hub, Howard Carrington raised his glass as the small assembly cheered. The past 2 years had transformed not just my circumstances, but my understanding of what mattered. My recovery from the poisoning had plateaued 6 months earlier. The tremors in my right hand would remain permanent, as would occasional cognitive lapses and reduced stamina. But these limitations had become integrated aspects of my existence rather than defining features. The community impact statistics are remarkable, Elizabeth Chen commented, examining the project report. Now a federal judge, after her successful prosecution of what the media had dubbed the Weber case, she remained a valued ally. Victor, arriving late from a meeting, joined us on the terrace. In the 2 years since my revival, our relationship had evolved into something neither of us had anticipated, a partnership of equals, with separate homes but intertwined lives. "Sorry I'm delayed," he said, accepting a glass from Martha. The Singapore investors had questions about the sustainability metrics. As conversations flowed around me, I took a moment to observe this assembly. Not family by blood, but a community formed through choice and shared purpose. Martha and her daughter, now the Foundation's educational director. Michael Donovan, who had transitioned from detective to the Foundation's security consultant. The first graduating class of Weber Scholarship recipients, Elizabeth and her family. "Speech!" called Howard Carrington, raising his glass again. I smiled but shook my head. "I'm an architect, Howard. We build rather than talk." "Nonsense," Victor countered. "I've sat through enough of your client presentations to know better." Yielding to their encouragement, I moved to the edge of the terrace where the lake stretched before us, Chicago's skyline visible in the distance. 2 years ago today, I began, I faced a choice between accepting a planned ending or designing a new beginning. As an architect, the answer was obvious. I gestured toward the urban hub model displayed nearby. "We build." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. But what I've learned since then is that the most important designs aren't buildings or projects. They're the connections between people, the foundations of trust, the frameworks of purpose, the structures of meaning we create together. After the guests departed, Victor remained, helping Martha clear the last glasses despite her protests. "You seem contemplative," he observed as we sat watching the moonlight on the lake. "I received a letter from James yesterday," I explained. "His first in 18 months. Victor's expression tightened. What did he want? "To inform me he's eligible for parole next year. He's completed multiple rehabilitation programs, found religion, written a memoir about toxic family dynamics. Are you going to respond?" I shook my head. "There's nothing left to say. Some buildings can't be salvaged after fundamental damage. They can only be acknowledged as ruins, studied for their failures, and left behind." Victor nodded, understanding as always. "Any regrets?" he asked finally. I considered the question seriously. The physical aftermath of the poisoning remained. The tremors, some memory lapses, reduced stamina requiring careful management. Yet these limitations had forced innovative adaptations in both my home design and working methods. "Only that I didn't make that call to you sooner," I answered truthfully. "I lost years to fear and inertia before James ever gave me those pills." Victor reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "We have now, and we're making good use of it." Inside my perfectly designed home, the architectural plans for Urban Hub's third phase lay ready for tomorrow's review. On my desk, applications from next year's scholarship candidates awaited evaluation. The occasional tremor in my hands remained a permanent reminder of what had nearly been lost. But like any good architect, I had incorporated this structural reality into my design rather than pretending it didn't exist. "To second chances," I said, raising my glass one final time. "And to the architects who build them," Victor replied. Against the Chicago skyline, where buildings I'd designed decades earlier stood alongside newer creations, I embraced the truth that had saved me. It's never too late to redesign your life. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.